word back.
Okay, it's a motion to make a change. Need a second to the motion.
Second.
She's just pulling off the agenda. So you don't need to have a motion. She's just pulling out.
You can do whatever motion. I understand we do not
Really?
need a motion to, or a second on the motion
It's
from
our
our
agenda.
parliamentarian.
Okay, and I know that you are the parliamentarian, but I thought to add or remove an item from the agenda, it did require a motion and a vote.
Is she not just pulling it for later consideration?
No,
Yes.
she's pulling it entirely from the.
I said for
today.
a future board meeting
Oh,
for,
okay. I'm sorry, I just thought she was pulling it out for separate consideration today.
No.
Misunderstood, you're correct.
Okay,
I'm
we do
sorry.
have a motion and we do have a second.
Second was, sorry,
Me.
Here.
thank you.
And with that, it is.
Do we discuss the motion or no?
If it's a motion, yes.
It could be discussed, yes. Yes, Alderman.
This is the third, is this the sixth week that we, or third time that we are discussing this, right, we've had 2 study sessions on this already, I think?
That's correct.
Okay, just, I wanted to clarify.
Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Ms. Alderman.
Well, we were supposed to have a study session on this, but technically at the last study session, we didn't really discuss it. In fact, we discussed the other things, and it was like, okay, well, if you have questions or concerns, meet with Ms. Moody or Mr. Wilkins, in which I did, in fact, meet with Mr. Wilkins afterwards. However, I've yet to hear discussion on this actually individually delve through as a board together. So I do not feel that we have discussed it, but also I do think that there are honestly, some constitutional issues written within it that we need to look at, and I have asked for clarification from MTAS. So that is why I've made the motion.
Alderman Berry.
To the motion at hand, I think that I'm going to vote no. We can have the discussion during that line item on why we want to pull it, and at that time decide if we want to postpone that vote after having a full discussion. Thank you.
Ms. Alderman Almacher.
Also, given the nature that tonight we have our agency's budget request, I would like to give more time to the people in our audience who, I know this is going to be a lengthy meeting, and I suspect that will be a lengthy discussion that I would like to be further prepared for. So for your consideration, please.
What are you asking, Alderman Almacher?
For my motion to be granted by the rest of the board.
On the,
Yes.
okay, we do have a motion and a second to remove this item from the agenda until for further discussion be at a later date.
Yes, sir.
All in favor of that motion, vote green for yes and red for no.
I don't have a vote from Alderman McGee.
Oh, I did. I pushed it.
Okay, we'll see.
It's still not showing.
Yeah. I don't know if you're plugged in underneath or something, but
There are 4 noes,
1, 2, 3,
4 noes.
I did. I pushed it after she asked me to again. Try it again.
All of us, or?
I'm gonna see if it's plugged in under here.
Okay.
We don't normally have an audience.
all right, let me try.
There it is,
So you were no, but,
but I didn't vote.
You didn't vote. Everybody needs to vote.
all right,
Everybody needs to.
hold on 1 second, 1 second.
All
I am
again?
I
clearing
still
the
think we
board.
need a new voting machine thing. I've said that before.
All right, here we
Crawling
go.
around.
Everyone has voted, correct?
Yes.
Here we go. 3, 4, 5 to 2.
Motion fails. Okay, with that, I would now entertain that we adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, vote green for yes and red for no. That passes 6-1. With that, the agenda is adopted. At this time, under the section in the agenda of comments from citizens, I know we have on the agenda tonight to add a member to the airport board, and I believe we have some members in the audience who would like to be recognized with comments regarding their appointment to the board of airport board. So anyone wishing to speak regarding the appointment to the airport board can be recognized at this time. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to about 3 minutes, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Trent Moore. I'm at 504 Albemarle Drive here in Tullahoma. I moved to Tullahoma when I was 6 months old. For those of you that don't know me, I went to Bel Air Elementary, West Middle, Tullahoma High School, went to college, came back to Tullahoma, and went to work for the Worth Sports Company. They moved me to Richmond, Virginia, where I worked for them for 7 or 8 years as a sales representative covering multiple states. My career has been 35 years of sales and marketing and event planning. And I came back to Tullahoma about 2.5 years ago to be with family, to be back in town in the area that I love so much. And I am here tonight just offering my services to the city of Tullahoma to bring anything that I can to the mayor, to the board, to the airport authority, and help grow the airport. I think it's vital, just as vital as a good healthcare system, a good school system, a strong family unit. The airport is just as important to the city to grow as any other entity that I've just discussed. So I would like your consideration, and I would love to serve on the board if you choose to.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. We'll be voting on that later on in the agenda, so thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who recognizes to speak regarding appointment to the airport board? Please state your name and address, and please limit your comments to about 3 minutes.
My name is Steve McCamey, 201 Sunset Drive here in Tullahoma. And I have been interested in the airport board since we moved back here about 3 years ago. I've been a resident of Tullahoma. This will be my 3rd time in Tullahoma. I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, went to the University of Tennessee, majored in aeronautical engineering. I came down here to work for Sverdrup Technology back in 1985. And I'm also a private pilot. I've been a pilot for 42 years. Got my license in Knoxville. My very first cross country after I got my license was to Tullahoma for the big air show in 1980. I have flown in and out of this airport for most of the last 35 years. I now own the hangar at 104 South Taxiway. I bought it from Mr. Chelstorp. Many of you may remember my wife and I were one time trying to save the old hangar out at the airport, and we were talking to anybody and everybody who would listen about trying to restore that. And I finally said something to Mike Williamson, and it didn't end up being part of the project, but was real happy to see that done. I'm passionate about aviation. My whole career has been in aviation and space. We love the Tullahoma area. We plan to retire here. And I would like to offer my services to the airport board. I have a lot of relevant engineering experience. I've done a lot of capital projects for DOD and NASA. I have experience when I was in Roane County, I was on the Environmental Review Board, and I spent about 8 years as in environmental restoration and in regulatory compliance. So I have a passion for this town, this airport, aviation in general, and I'd like to offer my services.
Thank you, Mr. McCamey. Is anyone else? We do have one applicant that has indicated he cannot be here tonight, and his comments will be read into the record by our city recorder. Rosemary?
Yes.
Go on.
It's addressed to the Mayor Noes and Aldermen. I regret that I cannot be there in person to introduce myself and speak about the position on the board of the Tullahoma Airport Authority. I am new to Tullahoma, having moved here in 2019. I have been a pilot for 14 years and had visited many airports around the country. I have been struck with how big of an impact a local airport makes on a community and how important that is to the visitors and local residents alike. I think being a member of the board of the Airport Authority would give me a chance to be more involved with the airport and all of its stakeholders, as well as to become more involved with my newfound community. I think that I would be an asset to the board and look forward to serving the community in this capacity. Sincerely, Skip Farr, dated April 3rd of 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Golan. I believe that would be all the applicants that we had for the Airport Authority, and we will be acting on that position later on the agenda. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for any other comments from citizens who would like to address the board on any item on the agenda for tonight. If you would, please come forward and state your name and address.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Alderman. My name is Phil Hensley. I reside at 505 Lakeway Place here in Tullahoma. I work for the Tullahoma News. The Tullahoma News and the other newspapers that are served by Lakeway Publishers, which is our parent company, have been in existence for over 100 years. In fact, the Tullahoma News was founded in 1881, 19 years after the city of Tullahoma was founded. So we've been around a long time. In Ordinance 1576 will be discussed tonight, you'll see a term, not to newsboys, which is an exemption that newsboys have. I guess it had for over 140 years. It probably has been in the charter since the existence of Tullahoma. So I'm here to speak tonight about this ordinance. Times have changed, but the importance of a well-informed community remains. There's no dedicated TV station for Tullahoma. You don't want to get your news off social media exclusively, I don't believe. So I think the newspaper is a very important part of our community. The Tullahoma News supports the community. Recently at the parade for the football team, we gave out our sections that we printed for the, we made sure the players got them, the people in attendance got it. We give free papers to schools for their after-school programs, and we provide free papers to the city and to municipalities around the city, the municipal entities that serve our communities. So we try to be a good community partner, and we try to make sure that our community stays informed. Repeal of the exemptions is bad for business and for the greater good of the community. The ordinance does not simplify the code by removing the exemptions. It adds more regulations. In addition, I'll point out that the narrative to 1576 does not cite any problems or issues resulting from 9208, which is the section that is up for repeal tonight. I guess I would ask why it has been targeted for repeal. Additionally, the city code was amended in 1988 and again in 2010, and that resulted in several deletions to Title IX. But it stands to reason that if there were problems with the exemptions as they exist, that would have already been dealt with in those previous meetings. For over 30 years, Since those last two revisions of the charter, the exemptions have remained. And I would say that that's for good reason. The parties who lose their exemptions, which include bona fide charitable, religious, educational, patriotic, or philanthropic organizations, would now be required to file for permits. Section 9207 of the charter says that permits will only be issued for 30 days. And 9212, number 6, states that only 2 permits for any one organization will be issued within a year. I submit this would severely handicap some of the organizations that support our community and provide for the greater good. There's also other restrictions which penalize worthy organizations. Also, 9201 precludes any selling of goods within the city without a permit. Removing these exemptions would mean in the city, what would that mean for church groups that want to sell or raise funds for their church group in the parking lot? Would they have to be permitted in order to do so? Would Girl Scouts selling cookies at Walmart need a permit? And if so, how far would 2 permits go in a year?
Mr. Alderman, let me interrupt, but we
Yes,
do
sir.
have a lengthy meeting tonight, and I'd try to keep this to around 3 minutes. You've gone considerably over that, so concluding
sorry.
remarks, if you would, please.
I'll just conclude. Since 1576 does not cite any current issues or problems caused by Section 9208, and since those organizations that contribute to the greater good of the community would face increased and restrictive regulation, I ask the council to reject that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Those, please state your name and address and
My name
limit your
is
remarks
Keith
to
Ponder.
approximately 3 minutes.
All right. I'll try to make up for Phil's overrun. Yes, ma'am.
Keith who?
Ponder, P-O-N-D-E-R,
And your street address?
505 Lakeway Place. I'm the Vice President of Lakeway in Middle Tennessee and publisher of your Tullahoma News. I appreciate having a few minutes to address our concerns, and I'll try to hit a few different ones than what Phil mentioned. I would tell you, Mayor, it's a little humbling that we are governed by the part of the charter that deals with circuses, carnivals, and tent shows, but if the shoe fits, we'll wear it. It's my view this proposal, or proposed repeal, is creating a solution when there isn't a clear problem. I think it's an overreach, and in a community that rightfully prides itself on being business friendly, this feels very unfriendly to your oldest business in the community. The language in the second paragraph of the draft says, activities of transient merchants, peddlers, canvassers, and other solicitors shall be a privilege that ought to be regulated. That doesn't feel right to me. We're honored to serve this community, and we have done so through thick and thin. But as a business leader, I can tell you that we have more than enough regulation. Every little bit makes it that much harder and that much more expensive. I can promise you it's hard enough and expensive enough. There are several things unclear in this action. Phil touched on a couple of them, including how sales and soliciting are regulated on private property. Phil mentioned the code requires an application every 30 days. And I would ask if we would be required to submit one every month, pay a permit fee every month. And I would ask for you to consider what the criteria for this is. Phil mentioned that only one organization is granted a permit on any one day. So are we precluded on that same day from operating our business because of the structure of the permit? And how does that work when we publish 52 weeks each year? We publish 100 times. So in this model that exists, and clearly I think there's some work to be done on it, I don't see how this works. Let me reaffirm in closing that it is truly an honor to serve you and this community. We love Tullahoma. Most days we feel like Tullahoma loves us back. But in my view, this repeal is unwieldy, it's unnecessary, and it's ill-conceived. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I thank you all for your service. I know in your line of work and in ours, appreciation is sometimes fleeting, but we really do appreciate what you all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ponder. Are there any other citizens who would like to speak? Name and address, please.
Greg Gressel, 316 Oak Park Drive. I had not intended to speak, but speaking to the ordinance 1576, with many of your service organizations in town to put yet other restrictions upon what they're trying to do and all that they do for the city of Tullahoma, I would think that this would be something that we would want to reject. And when you think of those organizations and the kind of service projects they do for this community and for the many ways that they support this community, this particular ordinance would be a mistake. And so I ask you to vote against.
Thank you. Any other comments from citizens regarding the agenda for tonight? Thank all of you who have taken time to comment. This time we'll move right along to reports from our alderman. We'll start with Alderman McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have anything to report tonight. The committees that I have been assigned to, they don't meet until this Wednesday and Thursday of this week. But I would just like to advertise the egg hunt that's going to be Saturday, that I'm partnering with South Jackson and Tullahoma Parks and Recreations. There's going to be a egg hunt at 1 o'clock at South Jackson Civic Center and breakfast with the Easter Bunny at 8 a.m. With Parks and Recreation, and that's going to be held at City Steps. And that's all that I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to Alderman Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to read off I figured out where this came from. Thought I grabbed my notebook, but I grabbed my Bible instead. So I got some, they're both black leather bound. I'm thinking, how did this get here? Who's telling me something? But I figured it out. The only big, I've got a sports council meeting Wednesday evening, planning commission next week. The only other thing is last week, the TDEC met and it's a long one, Health, Education, Housing, and Facilities Board had a special called meeting, and this was to discuss a request from CCP for a pilot program. This is the group that is looking to purchase and revitalize the Tullahoma Village area. Pilot, for those who may not know, is short for payment in lieu of taxes, something similar we do with TUA. And initially they had said that they would not be seeking a pilot, but like with everyone else, due to the recent economic climate and supplies and their project, and I was guessing from memory on this, was expected to take about over $1 million more than what they initially anticipated. And so to help with that a little bit, they requested a pilot. They presented a 15-year graduated scale, and that was passed by the Health, Education, Housing, and Facilities Board. And I believe that if everything goes well, they're expected to close next May, I believe. So that's kind of an update on that. I don't know if there's anything that I missed there. Did I miss anything?
So this is our executive director over the Health, Ed, and Housing Facilities Board.
Thank you, Mayor, Alderman. Alderman Berry, thank you for that summary. The Community Preservation Partners, CCP, are looking to spend $16 million investment in the city of Tullahoma and have asked for the pilot, like you have suggested. The concerns they had with interest rates and inflation, the way they explained it was that they went from a $29,000 per door expense to a $60,000 per door renovation of the 88 units at Tullahoma Village. So I think it's important to understand the scale of the investment for when you're looking at the living conditions here in Tullahoma and for our citizens that live in Tullahoma Village. And
Thank you.
I'm glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
That was all I had.
Thank you, Alderman Berry. Alderman Hallmark.
As far as committees, Mr. Mayor, both of my committees that I sit on, the Tourism Council and the 911 Commission, meet next week, so I hope to have a report on both the following week. I would like to take my time tonight. I'm going to skip the small business shout out. Instead, I want to thank the mayor for finally I've got it now to where we are going to be announcing every new small business in our agenda packets, and I'll be referring to those. So I'm going to start probably just doing small business shout outs, and I may pick a couple of those to highlight, but to draw your attention to it, and I'm going to start putting those on my Alderman page as well. So I'm going to cut that back to once a month and try to visit a couple of those and have some personal reports on those once a month. So that will not be this meeting tonight. However, I would like to, I know we're going to have further discussion on it later, so I'll save part of that. But I would like to thank all of the community agencies here tonight, and as well as the Telehome News. As many of you know, I'm a small business supporter, and as honestly, regulation as one could be. I'm a very conservative individual, and the one thing that I really take issue with, and I want you guys to think about this as we deliberate on multiple of these issues in the community right now, is if you look at our ordinance number 1576 that the Tullahoma News spoke about, it's from Jennifer Moody, the city administrator, right?
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes.
Not a report. This is not a report.
This time's abuse report. We'll have a separate time for discussion on that item later. I believe the alder lady is out of order.
Point of order is out of order. So you will have an opportunity, plenty of opportunity to discuss this during that session. And yes, we will be adding these new businesses to the agenda as we get them every month, and there'll be about 10 per
Well, I
month.
didn't get to finish my thoughts, so you don't know whether it was out of order, but I will comply.
Thank you.
Regulation.
Moving over to the other side of the table, Alderman Blackwell.
School board will be meeting next week. I'll have something to report at the next one. The other thing I was going to say, as the downtown liaison, I'm encouraged to see the ARPA funding list contains some specifically things that I've heard from the downtown business owners and downtown advocates, and we'll discuss that at a later date as well. There are new banners that are up that I'm sure, if there are any questions, you guys can email me and I can forward them to Winston about those. But those have been put up, and they include going a little bit further, like the Christmas ones, or not the Christmas, the seasonal ones did. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Blackwell. Alderman Dunn.
Yes. First, with the tree board, there is an item that's on the consent agenda tonight, and I want to make sure everybody in the public also knows that we're going to be looking to amend our zoning ordinance on landscaping. So I know the tree board has worked really hard on that and sought out a lot of professionals. So to those in the public, please attend and voice your thoughts on that. Also, there's a tree naming contest going on. There is an award-winning willow oak that is over behind the painted house. And if you haven't had a chance to name it, we're accepting submissions from all ages, adult or child. I know my 8-year-old said Zark because it rhymes with bark, and there's barks on trees. So I don't know if that one's going to win, but anyway. And then Earth Day is coming up on April 18th. We're celebrating at the farmers market. I also went to the farmers market before I came here, and they had awesome donuts. So, but Earth Day, April 18th. Please come. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only committee meeting I've had since our last meeting, I think, was a TUA meeting. Nothing dramatic going on there. TUA provides us with great services, electrical, internet. If you don't have a good internet connection or you want to change, TUA will hook you up. Also, like to wish everybody happy Easter. If you've not shopped for your Easter bunny, shop Tullahoma. And that's all I have, Mayor.
At this time, I'll turn to our honorary alderman. Ms. Bobo, could you tell us some things that are going on in your world at the high school?
Yes, there's two big
Would you
things.
please use your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
please?
Yes, there's two big things coming up at our high school. We have the Distinguished Young Women Program on April 23rd, where girls in our junior class can participate and win money for college. And then we have graduation on May 13th, and our class is the 100th graduating class, so it's very exciting.
Oh,
for us.
wow, that's cool.
That's all.
Okay. It's time for me to talk about my activities. And I want to start out by saying that during this past 2 weeks, I've spent going around to every elementary school to make certificate awards to those who have participated and won in our What I Like About Tullahoma contest. For that contest, we had approximately 1,200 entries, and we selected some 40 winners. So those, hopefully you'll be seeing some pictures in the newspapers of some very talented writers who wrote what they like about Telehome. Had an opportunity on the 29th to participate in the Vietnam Veterans Memorial down at the History Park. Also had an opportunity to participate in the Tullahoma High School football banquet when our honorary alderman was recognized as being the leader of our cheerleading squad for that. And one of the most amazing things about that award banquet was we're recognizing some 22 senior football players along with the rest of the team. But of those 22 seniors, over half of that graduating seniors had a 4.0 or better GPA.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I said wow to that as well. That was very, very enlightening to have such a outstanding football banquet there. And we've already touched on the TAEDC awarded the pilot to participations there. So with that, we'll move right along. At this time, we'll have a report from our city administrator, Ms. Moody.
Or city
Let's let our attorney go first. You go.
Need to address it, so you go ahead.
Ms. Moody, okay, thank you.
Okay, I will also be brief. I wanted to remind the public that our Think Tullahoma 2040 plan the draft plan is available on our website, and we have a comments link. So if you please go on and review the plan documents and give us your feedback. We'll have that link live all month. Also, just share with the board, the Noon Rotary invited me to speak about the American Rescue Plan and our intended projects list on April 1st, so I enjoyed doing that. And I want to reserve the rest of my time to recognize our Chief Deputy Larry Sloan with Tullahoma Fire Department, and he's just going to speak briefly, maybe 3 minutes, about the response of some of our employees to the wildfires in Pigeon Forge.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Appreciate Ms. Moody extending the opportunity to brief the board on the fire department's response to what they called the Hatcher Mountain Fire in Sevier County, which started on March 30th. The fire kicked off due to a down power line. If you might remember, the winds all the way across the state were extremely high on the 30th. They had a power line that got knocked down, started a brush fire. The winds took it. It quickly overwhelmed the local resources. They had 4 fire trucks that were destroyed by a really fast-moving fire. They're lucky that they didn't lose any firemen. They put out a scramble request to the Tennessee Fire Chiefs Association Mutual Aid Task Force, and a lot of units from East Tennessee responded that afternoon. They gave a bigger request that evening for 20 engines, 20 tankers, and 20 brush trucks to respond as soon as possible. The Tullahoma Fire Department with myself and 3 other members, Lieutenant Smith, Engineer Evans, and Firefighter Parton, departed Tullahoma at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. We arrived in the staging area in Pigeon Forge, about 1,500 hours local time in East Tennessee. I was assigned as the task force leader. I was given another engine company out of Goodlettsville and a brush truck from Pleasant View. About 6 o'clock that evening, we were sent with a task force from Knoxville to protect a 500-unit log cabin complex, literally in the middle of nowhere. I've never seen anything like this, why they would stick this in an area that they did, but it has no fire hydrants. The houses aren't sprinklered, and they had a fire that was moving in that direction. It was burning down a hill, and they were concerned that once it got to the bottom of the hill, that it would take off and endanger this. So we were given a structural protection assignment. We did that for about 22 hours. Fortunately, we didn't have to deploy any assets on that. The next day, on Thursday, we were brought back to the staging area. We were cut loose about 8 o'clock that night to get some rest, so we went to a local hotel, reported back to the staging area the next morning. I was assigned 5 brush trucks from East Tennessee as part of my task force that day. And basically, we went to an area that is a resort, a gated resort called Shagbark. And probably out of 350 structures that were in that resort, 300 of them were destroyed. We spent about 8 hours mopping up small fires and just making sure that roads were passable and that the buildings that did manage to survive were not going to be destroyed by a follow-on fire. On Sunday, we did the same thing with a task force from Sevier County, and we were cut loose that night about 6 o'clock and returned home. We were returned to Tullahoma about 10 o'clock that night. Fortunately for us, we didn't have any injuries. The only damaged equipment, we cracked the tail light on the support vehicle. So we've got pretty lucky on that, because everywhere you went, there were trees falling, and we were having to cut lines through different areas. But I appreciate Ms. Moody and the board allowing us to participate in this type of activity. This is as funny as it sounds, it's a morale booster for firefighters to be able to participate in an activity like this. Dylan Parton was driving me over there. I was in the support vehicle with him where I was trying to gather information. The engine was behind us. And we also had an engine from Hickerson Station. And all the way over there, Dylan, he's watched a lot of TV about the wildfires in California, and he had all these grand expectations, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings that it's probably not going to quite be like California. But seeing some videos and some pictures of Wednesday night and early Thursday, it was very much like California. So, but we were happy to go over there and lend assistance. These type of incidents are going to become more and more. They don't just happen with fires, but with flooding and swift water emergencies like we had in Nashville in 2010. And this mutual aid association that the Tennessee Fire Chiefs has is a really good asset, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate in that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain.
Well, thank you for your service, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it. Anything else, Ms. Moody?
No, that's my report.
Thank you. Tonight, we have on the consent agenda several items, and reading this caption will be something that will be incorporated in our rules and procedures that I hope we can adopt tonight and not have to read it every time, but for tonight I will. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. During that portion of the meeting reserved for comments from citizens, as shown on the agenda, citizens may request an item be removed from the board and the consent agenda. That item will be discussed separately on the item. Since there are no changes to the consent agenda, let me just read the caption, starting off with item number 22-45. It's the minutes from our March 28th regular meeting. 2246 is the February financial report, which is included on page 8 in your packet. 2247, to set a public hearing for 5:30 PM on April 25th on a request from the Tullahoma Tree Board for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance number 505, landscaping. Item number 2248, to set a public hearing also at 5:30 PM on April 25th. That's for a spend plan of $5.8 million Rescue Plan Act funding. And moving right along. $22.49 is to approve a request to waive a special event sign permit fee in the amount of $30 for promotion of the farmers market in Telehome each Monday from April through October 22. Item number 2250 is to approve the purchase of a cook and hold oven in the amount of $10,115.16 from JES Restaurant Equipment and Concessions and Special Events for the use of the Tullahoma Parks and Recreation Department. Item number 2251 is to approve an optional 3-year extension valued at $10,093.41 in total for a license agreement with Contola Training Solutions for citywide online employee training program. And on item number 22-52 is to again announce a vacancy on the Arts Council for Tullahoma. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda? Motion.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Alderman Berry. Alderman Blackwell, second. Vote aye, vote green for yes, and red for no.
Oh, no. Do we have to do it again? No.
Nobody's working.
Technically.
This is a sign.
Okay, voting on the consent agenda. Vote aye, green for yes, and red for no.
All right, ready? Let's try that again. I did plug something in earlier.
There's always technical difficulties.
What? You saw something?
You saw something?
Again, on the consent agenda, green for yes and red for no.
There we go.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay? Consent agenda is adopted. Unfinished business. Resolution number 1894. A resolution to proclaim approval of a private act to amend the charter of the city of Tullahoma regarding the collection of delinquent property tax. That detail is on 24, as you recall, was to enable this to list more than 25 delinquent tax members on one document. So, any motion?
Motion to approve resolution 1894. as written.
Motion to approve by Berry and seconded by Blackwell. Any discussion? Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I sent one edit with to anyone with a edit to misspelled word on it, or did that get caught?
Yes,
Okay,
we're
great.
correcting that on the
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Put green for yes and red for no.
Thank you, Miss Spelling Bee.
It was the word "the."
Motion approved, 1894 is approved.
I do have that resolution, which requires everyone's signature on it before you guys leave tonight, if you don't mind signing it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. An item that's been discussed earlier. Ordinance number 1576, an ordinance of the city of Tullahoma, Tennessee to repeal in its entirety section 9, 2-208, which is exceptions of Title 9, business, peddlers, solicitors, etc., of the Tullahoma Municipal Code for the approval on the first of two readings. Those details were on page 28. Let's get a motion on the floor. Motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve 1576. Need a
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Need a second. Thank you. Got a second. And with that, I'd like to recognize Ms. Moody to handle it for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm going to be brief in my description because I would like to address the public comments that we heard tonight. So just briefly, I'll explain this amendment was seeking to repeal in its entirety the section of exemptions in the peddler's ordinance. And that particular part of the code would establish a uniform and consistent permit process for any peddler, canvasser, so somebody knocking on doors, solicitor, transient merchant, that could be such as a food truck, or any other vendor who's conducting business within the city. The purpose of that process would be that they'd have to seek a permit with the city. If it was applicable, we could conduct a background check. If they were requesting to solicit from the public right-of-way or the city street, we would have a process for reviewing those locations and determining whether or not to permit it. And also, we'd have contact information, we'd know what hours, everything about how they were intending to operate. So that was the intent. But let me say, I am open-minded. I heard the public comments tonight. I think there is no reason to rush. As I said, there's no urgency in my intent. My only intent was to make sure that we had a process where anyone conducting these types of businesses would have to come forward and seek a permit from the city. So that being said, communication is what is at the heart of this, and clearly some of the public comments tonight tell me that there's a lack of good communication that's occurred, and I would like your consideration of my request to probably just defer consideration of this, send it back to me, let me communicate with the entities that would be affected, understand what maybe unintended consequences this would have, and come back to you with a recommendation.
Do I hear a motion to postpone until a certain time?
I have a motion to
Give
postpone.
comments first. I had my hand up first.
No, but Alderman Almonter had her hand up.
Oh,
before.
okay.
So did Alderman Berry.
Go ahead, Ms. Almonter.
Thank you, Mr. Blanks and Mr. Mayor. Yes, so as I was stating prior, I sit on the Tourism Council, and so obviously this does affect tourism, it affects business, it affects the arts, it affects events, it affects...
Point of order, can we address the mayor, please?
Well, I said thank you to Mr. Mayor and Mr. Blanks, that I can look wherever I so choose. But I am addressing the mayor and Mr. Blanks. So my point was going to be that, yes, I completely agree with the Tullahoma News that this is over-regulatory. It is outside of the wheelhouse of what the city should be promoting. It is basically usurping the authority of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, number one, but it's also usurping the Constitution. And this also hinges into my next point of why the Board of Policies and Procedures should not be adopted. It all goes together tonight. Everything that I see on here tonight is about regulation, including this ordinance right here. But the regulations are being promoted from an unelected representative who is an insulated bureaucrat. The problem with this is she can put this on the agenda, but even in our own, even with this being what it is, we can then decide, you know, to postpone it or to not allow it to pass. However, we don't even have the authority. If I wanted to put this
Point
on
of
the
order,
agenda,
this has to be about this particular thing,
If
not
I
how
wanted
it got
to-
here.
if I wanted
You
to
can't talk
put
about
this,
this, you have to talk about this item, not how
I
it
am
got to
talking
the
about this
agenda.
item. If I wanted to put this on the agenda, this particular item, even according to our own rules, I would not be allowed to, which makes it to where if I have concerns from the Tullahoma News and from individuals in the community, I have no rights to say, I don't want this on the agenda, which is why I've tried to pull things and see how that worked tonight.
We're not talking about ordinance 1576 anymore, Mayor. We're not talking about it anymore. Point of order.
I believe we are talking about, this Alderman. I believe we are talking about this.
If I wanted to put
Let's
this.
Please keep your comments.
Yes, sir. If I wanted to put this ordinance on the agenda or knock this ordinance off the agenda, I have proven tonight I don't have the authority to do either, which is another reason why we are being over-regulatory within this ordinance and how we are operating. We need to be listening to the community. Thank you.
Well, yes, Alderman Berry.
Couple things real quick. We have the ability to add things to the agenda now. It's on our item, so any one of us has that authority. Ms. Moody does not have the authority to pass rules. We do that. She can recommend, and that is her job. I motion to postpone this until time. Before I say that, I 100% agree. And had it not been withdrawn, I would have voted no against it. But I do see taking it back and getting some comments and feedback from the citizens, because there is some in here. But overall, right now, I don't like it. So I make a motion to postpone this until such time as Ms. Moody has had time to talk with the community and maybe even a study, whatever. Till such time as Ms. Moody thinks that it's okay to come back to the board.
Motion to postpone until a later date. Second.
Second.
Are we still not doing discussion? We're no longer doing discussion?
We have a motion and a second, and we'll now have an opportunity to discuss. And did you did have your hand up?
Alderman McGee did.
I was going to
Meg.
second it.
Yes,
But
okay.
I didn't
I
have.
have discussion about the motion to postpone. I will be voting no to a motion to postpone because I think we have enough support right now to kill this in its entirety. And I think it's important that we note that we need to be the ones to make recommendations for ordinances. And I think that those should be brought to us in a study session. Something like this should be brought to us in a study session, not just brought directly to the board, because even I don't have that authority to put it on the agenda.
We have a motion and a second to this, to postpone. Discussion?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to discuss, I was in the same boat as Daniel, to also vote no on this too. I'm deep in permitting processes in general in my life right now, and they're driving me bananas. So when this comes back, I'd like to just share with Ms. Moody, probably via email if that's okay, what my concerns are, but I did want to make sure that like car wash fundraisers, the Shriners, like I can see nonprofits all being affected, the newspapers, door knockers, does that mean anytime we run for office? So I'm hoping that we can come up with a better solution if there even needs to be one, because as of now, I just see this of having a lot of unintentional consequences. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone.
I'd like to make a comment to the postponement. I just want to put the public's hearts at ease that there is a checks and balance system. Thank God that there can't be bullies within this group to bulldoze over everything else. So yes, the aldermen do have access to the agenda.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? Motion to postpone until a later date. Green for yes and red for no. Motion passes 6-1. Okay. At this time, we'll move on to item number 2253. 2253 is to consider appointment of qualified applicant to fill a vacancy on the Telehome Airport Board to serve for the remainder of an unexpired term. This term will end February the 27th, 2026. This time I'll open the floor for nominees for the Airport Board. Alderman Hallmark. Alderman Blackman.
I would like to nominate Dr. Farr.
We have Dr. Farr. nominated. Any other nominees?
I'd like to nominate Trent Moore.
And Alderman Hallmark.
My nomination was also going to be for Trent Moore, so.
Okay, we have 2 nominations. Any other nominations?
Oh, I don't have one. Do you want to pass me that?
Okay, we'll have a paper ballot on that. I believe the city recorder has the ballots prepared and vote individually.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
She's gonna give us a piece of paper.
Oh, darn. Okay, sorry.
Oh, it's not, oh, okay.
I apologize. I have your names on them. All one wrote on that.
Okay.
Jenny, it's, yeah. Here you
Your
go.
mayor knows.
I was being helpful. Thanks. So.
And the ballots are in.
Alderman Almacher voted for Trent Moore. Alderman Berry voted for Skip Farr. Alderman Dunn voted for Farr. Alderman Blackwell voted for Farr. Mayor Pro Tem Blanks voted for Farr. Mayor Noes voted for Farr. And Alderman McGee voted for Trent Moore. So it appears to be 5-2 in favor of Farr.
We will be notifying Mr. Farr that he's been elected to the board, and we will be advising him that the first meeting's tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.
Point of order, Mayor. Those of you that also put in applications, please continue to do that. Some of these committees are always in need of qualified applicants. So if you didn't get voted in tonight, keep your name in the hat because you may be picked. Our chairman of the airport authority knows that firsthand, right?
I do.
You didn't get picked first up, did you?
I did not.
But you did later, right?
I did.
So continue to put your name in. You may, also run and win.
I echo your comments. Mayor Pro Tem Blanks. Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. McCamey. Thank you.
Next order of new business is a resolution number 1895, a resolution to adopt the rules of procedure of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Get a motion on the floor. Alderman Blackwell,
Move to approve.
seconded by Berry. I have a motion and a second, and we have a second and customary for Ms. Moody to address the board on anything that she'd like to address regarding the rules of procedure.
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Any comments on the rules? You've had these for some time to take a look at. So, is there any discussion? Hold on.
So I like to look at how all the moving parts work together. I think that's what we have to do so that we don't invite unintended consequences. And that's why I talk about multiple things, try to stay focused on this, but they do affect all the other moving parts. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen Rules and Procedures should be drafted in its entirety by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, not by the city administrator. There are items on here, for example, 2.3. Prior to adding any item discussed at study session to a regular meeting agenda, the proposed item must have a sponsor and a co-sponsor from at least 2 board members. We are asking for invitations to violate sunshine laws. to get people to come together collectively to promote something to go on the agenda. Yet our city administrator, as an insulated bureaucrat, can put anything she wants to on the agenda. This is completely.
Comments about order with insulated
This
bureaucrats.
is, my point is, it's supposed to be the Board of Mayor and Aldermen Rules and Procedures, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen agenda, and we need to make sure that we're creating the rules that give us that responsibility. And in your support, don't put any more on your shoulders than you already have as the city administrator. Thank you.
We have the opportunity to approve or disapprove those tonight. Discussion?
Mayor Noes, I understand Alderman Allmarker's concerns. It was actually something I brought before this draft came, and I think it's included in there to ensure that we aren't breaking sunshine laws by being able to put it on a study session, and in that study session discuss it so that it will be clear who the sponsor and co-sponsor would be in an open meeting forum. So I don't believe that that's going to be an issue. I thought that as well when the first draft did not have that part in it, but this new one does. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I think it's in 2.2. I think that addresses that concern of yours. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman?
I gotta,
Excuse me.
Again, I want to make sure that we all understand that this more or less was drafted by the Board of Aldermen. I know it was kind of through a survey and what do you like, what do you not like, but I mean, this wasn't just created by the city administrator.
Very good point.
In a vacuum.
Not at all.
Alderman Allmarker.
Well, yes. So first of all, I did see, that we can bring it to a study session, but the problem is we shouldn't just be able to bring it to a study session. If it's something that needs to be acted upon, we should have the right to bring it to the board for consideration as a whole. I also take issue with section number 6, the board requests and staff relations. 6.1, this policy is to establish a system to clarify that individual board members, including the mayor, should not be providing direction to staff, excluding both the city administrator and city attorney, both of whom report directly to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Direction to staff should only come through the city administrator. While I understand the point of this, if there is something, what happens if our city administrator is unavailable? What happens if she's out of pocket? So I do think that there's certain things in here that make it very evident that there's some insulation trying to be had. There are things that I've worked with at Parks and Rec, working on master plans. I went and looked at horse show grounds. I thought that was something really cool. Just generating ideas. How could we expand Parks and Rec? Not saying that I've proposed anything, but that's something I worked directly with the Parks and Rec director when I did that. I didn't, and you knew about it, but you weren't necessarily there as far as the city administrator, I'm saying that the city administrator knew about it, but she wouldn't necessarily be there. If there's some sort of emergency or issue at hand, we can be fined. Policy enforcement, 8.1, if you're in violation of this policy, you can be fined $50. So if I call the chief of police and say, hey, we have an emergency down here at such and such, and I didn't go through this, and I need somebody down here, technically, I may have done my authority by reached out to him because I didn't go through the city administrator first. We can be fined $50 by a 2/3 vote of the board for some of these very subjective violations. That some of them may be, not even a consequence or an intended violation. In our executive sessions, for example, one of the things that I've kind of taken issue with executive sessions, I think it should be stated in there who can attend an executive session. I don't think it's appropriate for some of the ways that we do our executive sessions as far as in section 7. One of the things it says that, the city attorney shall he should be the one to provide any public response or comments. However, as elected officials, we should also have the right to decide especially when we're named in a lawsuit, what we can and can't say as far as free speech.
We can't do that.
Nope. Well, I understand that I'm not talking about publicly, but if I get subpoenaed, for example, Or the discussion of, here's the other thing. Sunshine Law state that the discussions of pending litigation, yes, that could be like a Q&A, but isn't it true, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Parliamentarian, that whenever the discussion turns towards a settlement or a resolution, that discussion is supposed to be had in a public meeting? Because that's what I've read as far as MTAS is concerned. So that's one of the things that I've reached out to as MTAS was Section 7 on executive sessions. And also, if our city, the city is separate from the board. The board is a check on the city, and the city is over here. So if the city and a constituent end up in a lawsuit, the board is kind of the go-between. Should our city administrators and city staff be invited to executive sessions when they aren't actually a part of the board? So there are clarifications for executive sessions I would really like to have from MTAS before we proceed further with this. And that is why I tried to motion to postpone.
I think I was next.
We got one over here.
Sorry.
Okay. Black one.
One of the things that Alderman Allmacher said about calling the chief of police if there was an issue or calling 911, I cannot imagine any of us fining one another for that. In an emergency, please do call 911, each of you. The other thought I had is that $50 is actually, if I'm correct, in our codes already, that is the expectation, is the fine. And let's be very clear, the person who's most likely to get that fine is going to be me with my potty mouth. And I recognize that. It's like a swear jar. But I think that what I wanted to say that I think I'm very appreciative of seeing is 4.1 decorum. I'm glad that that is in here. I have some strong concerns with how we behave in these meetings, for lack of a better term. I'm glad to see this, and I'm excited that we are being tasked to specifically act professionally and to treat our staff who work very hard and are very appreciated by us on the board respectfully as well.
Well, Barry, you had your hand up.
A couple of things real quick. Mr. Mayor, I think and I think most of us know this, that it's important for us to know that it's the will of the board, all 7 of us, or the majority of us, and we don't act as individuals. And so when an item comes on the agenda or the policies come to the agenda, if we as a board do not like this policy, we as a board can say no. And that is the board's decision, and that's what we're here to do. The board also, I object to the comments and the treatment, I think, towards Ms. Moody. I think it's inappropriate. I do not always agree, but we don't have to, but we should treat each other with respect, and I think that's what some of these policies are attempting to do. We don't set our own laws up here. We need to abide by the same rules as one another. I won't go there. The $50 is already in the ordinance, so if there was an issue of that, we would need to change that ordinance. It's just repeated in here for people who may not have read the ordinance. On the settlement pieces, I've been on this board and we've discussed in executive sessions, but when it came time for settlements or issues like that, we do take some of those too, if we have to make a decision, because you are correct, Alderman Allmacher, that we cannot deliberate in an executive session. It is there for us to be informed, and those are matters. The language in 7.1 is the city attorney shall be authorized to provide any public responses or comments as needed on matters involving the litigation. Just the litigation, and even in that, the city attorney works for the board of mayor and aldermen. So what he reports out will be again at the will of the board and not his own accord. To the going to staff members, I think it's important to understand, to read our charter and for each of us to fully understand how our city government works. It's set up like a corporation. We have a singular employee. We can't fire anybody else in the city. We can't tell anybody in the city. They don't work for us. We have one employee. And I think that was one that I had recommended from the beginning. And I think that it helps not only keep employees from saying, who do I listen to, but it also helps from impropriety or the perception of impropriety, because if somebody comes to me for a problem and I help them, but I don't the next person, then I put even if I have a good reason, I put myself. And so if we do things how our charter says that we are to act, this just reinforces that piece here. I support this. I would have gone a little bit further. I would have liked to have seen, we have ethics in our city ordinances, but I would have loved to have seen us go a little bit further on that. But this is a great start, and we as a board can change this later if we as a board want to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let me, I'll get back to you in just a moment. I will remind all of us as alderman and as mayor, one of the first things that I was introduced to as an incoming alderman some years ago was the way that we got things done. And that was to go through the city administrator, who was at that time was Jody Balls. Everything flowed through that city administrator. So we've all heard that as to how our former city government works. Alderman Almar.
You are absolutely correct. Everything is supposed to flow through the city administrator, and I do appreciate that hierarchy, which is exactly why, as a board, it is incumbent upon us to hold her accountable in public meetings and to make sure that we are doing so in a transparent fashion. Section 4, Decorum. During board meetings, board members shall preserve order and shall obey the rules of the board, shall seek to phrase and communicate all writings, publications, speeches in a professional and constructive manner. And it says, it's about the decorum. But here's the thing. Some of these are very, very subjective. While you may think that I am attacking, I am not. I am simply doing what is my job. And not everybody that does their job is a bully. And so I just feel like we need to remove some of the subjectivity. Also, considering this is an election year and we have the majority of this board, some of you will probably, let's be honest, will probably still be on here. I wish you all the best of luck in your election year that are running. But we don't know that to be fact. And since this is an election year and we have 4 board members coming on, shouldn't we wait and postpone this to let them have some say-so, since this also takes a 2/3 majority to change? Just some thoughts.
Alderman McGee.
Okay. There's a big difference between accountability and attack. And perception is very real. If we look out and see the faces of our guests, it's not good. I'll just go ahead and say it. So we have to be careful because perception is real, and not only for the guests that we have here, but for the ones who are watching on television. So we just have to be careful. It's not so much what you say, but it's how you say it to someone. Tone is very important. You can get your point across by just simply talking. But when you come across very defensive or in attack mode, that's a big difference between holding someone accountable. And that's all I have to say.
I'll call the question on resolution number 1895.
Okay.
So Green, got a second?
Second, did you second?
I'd like to make an amendment, if I could please, to the procedures.
Can we do it?
Already got the question at this point.
We got to vote.
Did we get a 2/3 majority vote on the call to question yet?
Wait a second.
I got a second.
Call the
So
question.
That's what we're voting on, is call to question?
No. Yes, he voted. The
Okay,
motion.
so this
But
is,
she had her hand up
She did
before
have
he
her
did
hand
that.
up earlier.
So we're voting to call the question. We got a motion and a second to call the question.
And I'm just going to ask who made the motion to call the question?
The mayor
And,
did.
okay,
I
and
seconded it.
thank you. Thank you, thank you. And now the call to question vote is on the board. And
All the question fails.
Yes, I would. The section 2.3 on board agenda, prior to adding any item discussed at study session to a regular meeting agenda.
But it's failed. So you have a resolution on what happened to that. So either, you're gonna have to reconsider your vote on that before you can go to anybody adopting it.
The motion to reconsider failed.
No, the call to
No,
question
the
failed.
call to
Call
question.
to question failed.
Correct.
So we can
We're back to
keep
the original-
discussing.
We're back to the original
Well,
motion.
if you reconsider that motion.
The motion
No, we
didn't
didn't
fail,
vote
just
on
the
the
call to
motion.
question. Just the vote to have a vote failed.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
No,
discuss it.
when the mayor says I called the question,
But-
he's saying vote on it.
That takes a second and a
vote.
majority.
'Cause we were
to
ending
call the
discussion.
question. Doesn't it?
No one moved the previous question, which would have been, you would have had to have
Oh,
moved
we
the
did, yes, we
the
did.
previous
We had-
question, and then that would have to be allowed by a two-thirds vote.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider because I think everybody was confused.
There was a motion to consider.
I think it's.
There was a motion to consider.
Reconsider.
No, not to reconsider, the original motion.
Can we, is it okay for her to make a,
Can we read?
I
I
think
believe what he
what
meant
you
was call the
had,
previous question,
what you-
but he just said call.
you
the
would
question.
need, you would need to read what the mayor said at the time that the vote was called.
I had called the question, so,
Okay.
but I think,
And I
They were-
seconded it.
right. But was your understanding, was it call to question or motion to?
I believe the mayor's intent is important here.
Yes.
correct?
Your intent was to end discussion on
There you
this
go.
matter, correct?
Then this vote, it has to be null and void, because you're calling the previous question. You have to get a two-thirds vote of this board to call the question. And then if it passes, you go back to the consideration of
and,
the amendment, or that section.
well, and
Since
we
it
voted
didn't,
to
we
not
continue.
call the question.
Right.
It didn't pass by two-thirds.
Right, we voted not to call the
Not, so we can
question.
continue with discussion at this point, is the
That's the
understanding.
Actually, I'm gonna,
No.
we voted, it's done. Rules and procedures are failed. I'm just kidding. Motion to reconsider. I want the will of the board to be done. And so if we can just motion to rescind the previous vote, can I make that motion?
No.
No, okay. Well, that would've fixed everything.
It's reconsider
Okay.
at this point in time.
Okay. Motion to reconsider then.
Second.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a motion to reconsider the
But we
original
can't do
motion.
it, don't vote yet, because I haven't cleared the board. Motion to rescind,
Reconsider
reconsider,
the vote.
And this is,
Denying the calling of the question, is that where we are? Because that's
Right.
where I see.
Motion to reconsider denying of the call of the questions, that we can go back to discussion.
But wait a minute. If you didn't get a two-thirds vote to call the previous question,
Right, we can just keep discussing.
you can keep discussing.
That's what.
that's what we're
That's what
trying
we're
to
trying to
say.
do.
Yeah.
that's what we.
Right, that's what we were.
That's what we're doing.
So,
But I thought the way that you had said it, you were saying, let's vote on the
No.
procedures. Okay, all right.
the motion was made by
Motion
Mayor.
redacted.
to end a discussion, seconded by blanks, and it failed, so now
Now
we
you go
can
back and-
continue to
and choose an
discuss.
Yeah, my motion's redacted. Let's consider discussion. That's all I was trying to do.
Consider,
Going back to the original, and we have a comment on the original.
It almost seems so moot now. I was hoping to make an amendment. The 2.3, prior to adding any item discussed at study session to a regular meeting agenda, the proposed item must have a sponsor and co-sponsor from at least 2 board members filed in writing to the city administrator. I would like to remove that for now, please, so that it could be looked into better.
So you're
I'll
moving to
second.
amend by striking that provision.
Yes, ma'am.
Give me this section again.
I can appreciate the motion. I second.
Give me the section again.
Does that,
So you got a motion and a second, but what was the item?
2.3 to strike.
2.3.
Yes, sir. Under board agenda.
Until further.
Until MTS,
Okay.
word from MTS.
Okay, maybe we have a motion to reconsider.
No.
No. The motion to strike. You're on amendment now of the procedures.
Okay. Then we have a motion to strike,
And you have a motion to amend the procedures by striking that section.
2.3.
Daniel's
Got a
hand
second
is.
for that.
And we got, who made the motion?
Dunn.
And seconded by Almacher.
And Daniel
Okay.
has his hand up.
And now we have a discussion.
I will be brief. The city of Manchester has this same language. The Tennessee House requires sponsors, co-sponsor, a sponsor and a co-sponsor. The United States House and Senate require a sponsor and a co-sponsor. The city of Shelbyville, there are cities all across the state of Tennessee that have this exact same. I will vote no, but I think that it's important for the board to know that this is already in practice from the federal level, the highest in the land, all the way down to our very own state government. And I think that what it helps do, we are all adults. We know not to deliberate, right? But we can say, hey, I'd like to get this on the agenda. And that kind of keeps, because again, we are a board, we're not a group of individuals. And so I think that there should be some collaboration and not just throwing random things on there that nobody else supports, which is why I don't support striking that, because there's already
Alderman
precedent.
Yeah, so the reason that the federal government has it and the state government has it is they have multiple committees, and individuals usually come to those committee members, and then you get a sponsor and a co-sponsor within that committee. We are a small board and a small city, and if you notice all the lawsuits across the state based on sunshine laws, a lot of them have to do with that in itself and having co-sponsors, because you are inviting litigation when you enact this. And I have said it multiple times on this very board in this seat that we are inviting litigation, and I have not been heard, and we invited litigation. This is another one of those times. I completely agree that I need to hear more from MTAS and how to better appropriate the wording if we are going to include such. We are a small board, we are not a state house, and we are not a Congress at the federal level. I'll go back and say it again. We should have all the right in the world to add as elected officials in a small city something that we want to see on the agenda. There may not even be a motion. If all it is words on a page and it doesn't even get a motion, you should have that right just by sitting up here and being elected by the people. And that is for future board members as well. So, thank you.
Yes, Alderman Black.
I'm pretty sure Red Bank does this as well, and they are definitely small. So I know the city of Nashville does too, and so I think that, honestly, I think it would be good. It would quite streamline, the way it's written right now will streamline making sure that we're not just sitting here reading something and it just not moving anywhere. It'll allow the point of this is for us to get to work, right? Like right now, we're not working. We need to work, and this will help us get to work. We'll know at least has some traction to move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to strike 2.3. Any further discussion on striking 2.3? Vote green to strike and red to not strike. Excuse me.
Correct.
Wait.
Green to strike.
Green to strike,
Red to not strike.
red to not strike.
Okay, I think I did that right.
Fails, it does not, will not strike.
You got 4 to 3.
4 to 3.
4 to 3 to not strike. Now we go back to
3 to
the,
4. 3 to 4 is how about you read?
go back to the original motion to adopt the rules and procedures. the motion, the resolution on 1895 to approve the rules and procedures.
We've already called the motion. Oh, do we have a motion?
We have a motion.
We already have a
We do.
motion, okay.
I already have a motion and a second. Green to approve and red if not.
Mayor, could
Motion
I,
passes, we adopt
go ahead.
6-1. Do you have a comment, Ms.
It's
Booth?
late in the conversation for this comment, but I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that everything that is allowed in Robert's Rules of Order is available to this board. This document is meant to mark special rules of procedure where you're doing something different than what's in Robert's Rules. So Robert's Rules of Order allows you to add items to the agenda. If you remember, you do that under approval of the agenda, and you have to get a 2/3 vote to add it without any discussion. Oh, just a majority vote, thank you. But you do that without any discussion. And so my understanding from speaking with members of this board is you wanted an additional way to get items discussed among yourselves and get them added to the agenda. And the language here, unless I'm misunderstanding what was written, the way I understood it would work is that any one member could ask to have a topic placed on the study session. And as long as you provided it by the deadline of the agenda, it would automatically, without question, that topic would be placed on the study session. Then, at study session, when you have the opportunity to describe the item, discuss it with your peers, after that meeting, someone should send me an email and saying, I want to sponsor that. So that I know at least you're going to get a motion in a second when it gets put on the agenda. So that was not my idea. This is what was provided to staff by members of this board as an alternative process to Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Our parliamentarian would like to address the subject also.
Earlier, and vis-à-vis my confusion, when the agenda comes to you all, when you first consider it, there needs to be a motion to approve that agenda. Subsequently, and what happened here, it got the cart before the horse. Subsequently, then you make the motion to withdraw something. That requires a majority vote to get it off. And then you go back and you are amending the agenda. And then you go back and you adopt the agenda as amended or as presented or whatever. And as I understand what she's saying and what is written in the putting it on agenda, it is only coming out of that study session. It does not preclude an individual member from introducing a motion. Is that, that's the way I've read it, so.
And I would think
So the
that's
Hail Mary's
important
still
because
available.
if there was a matter of urgency, you would want to use Robert's Rules to consider adding something to the agenda the night of the meeting.
Okay, anyway, we have adopted by a vote of 6-3 the rules as we have. 6-1 as they've been presented. For those of you who are patiently waiting in the audience tonight, we apologize for the length of the session, but we do have one more item on the to discuss before we get to the nonprofits. With that, we'll adjourn the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I'll call the Mayor Board in session. Are there any public comments regarding the Beer Board from the citizens? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda. Minutes from March 28th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second, first by Blanks and second by Blackburn. Any comments? Green for yes, red for no. And that was approved 7-0. Okay, with that, we'll address our honorary alderman. Ms. Bono, you have attended your elected Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, including the Beer Board. We're now going into a study session, which we'll hear from nonprofits and their request for funding for their agencies. And we'll be hearing just briefly one other thing tonight, but I would like to just extend to you the invitation to not continue to stay.
Specifically you, bless your heart.
Okay,
Mayor,
Yes.
we are at 7 o'clock, and I know we don't want to prolong it, but I also know we want to give them the time that they need. Can we have a 5-minute recess so we can utilize the restroom?
We're on the clock.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just giving it.
You want me to stay for the study session?